I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for this opportunity to present our ideas and thoughts about this complex issue. We heard from Wolf today that this is a matter of fact. We can't change it. We have to learn how to cope with a new regulation, how to learn again to sleep well. So we maybe have a pragmatical solution with registries, and I was invited basically to explain how it could work. And so that my presentation is dedicated to this subject. In terms of the declaration of the interest, I work for a registry, so therefore I declare my role. Without coming back to the content of the regulation, let me just formulate the problem. And the problem is rather simple, the problem itself. So we need good data with a sufficient duration of observation. And we need qualitatively good data. And that should be on patient safety, that should be on the clinical outcomes, and that should be on the patient-reported outcomes. How can we generate the evidence? How can we collect this data? In epidemiology and in the clinical research, we basically have two options. The one is the interventional, you may all know that, randomized controlled trial, experimental approach to answer the question, can it work? Or we can go observational and to bear on real life data. And that's where the registries are basically located. Unless you have a very specific inclusion criteria, you can include basically all your patients and observe all of them. Now, if we imagine we have such a registries with all patients included, how can we support the medtech then? Let me talk hypothetically, but I will present some examples, some concrete examples. So the registry can obviously report on the implants. It can offer nested studies. So nested studies are those studies who are on top of some basis, on some core data set which you collect. Nested studies are actually very interesting because you have already a network of hospitals in the registry. You have already implants which you document. You have running procedures. So basically nested studies would mean just adding additional questionnaire or collecting additional data for one specific purpose. But nested studies could also help you to identify the cohort of the interest, for example, based on the available data, and then support your prospective study. And you can rely again on available infrastructure on hospitals and similar. But also registries can enable direct access to activity, for example, activity reports or activity numbers. It can also support study planning. It can benchmark at different scales, different levels, and can provide medtech with an independent, unbiased perspective. And it can support the safety field notice. And we already have examples from hip and knee joint registries. So we have a proof of concept. We would also, as a registries, be always open to jointly develop the metrics, the categorization of implants, the evaluation concept, and the comparator groups. Because in fact, this is a never-ending story. It's a continuous task to work on the data, to work on a registry, to develop it further. You may have heard about the National Joint Registry in the UK, which has a similar length of history, about 20 years, and which is continuously further developing. But it is important to know about the situation today with the spinal registries. The registries have limited funding and resources. That has to be very clear. They've never had additional tasks like collect implant data or do a full coverage or something similar. We have to be aware of this. Registries may have different setups in terms of the data structure, in terms of the follow-ups, yes or no, in terms of the patient-reported outcomes, yes or no, and which ones. Back to the implant data, they were actually by now never the focus of the clinical registries. Just think of Swedish spine registry, Finnish spine registry, but also a few others. And there are also challenges, which are probably also chronicle ones, which is the compliance of surgeons and hospitals, which is very natural, because data registration and quality assurance is not the first priority of the surgeons, but it is also data quality and the follow-up rates. There are probably many more, but these are, I would say, the key ones. So today, I don't think we have a perfect solution for to support the medtech, but we could have with the registries a way to address the challenges, and we are working together among the registries today. We have joined us in a so-called International Spine Registry group, and this group has identified 3 aspects which we want to focus on and which we try to harmonize. And the first one is a core data set to be present in all registries. The second one is the recommendation for prompts to be used as a kind of the first choice. And the third one is the how to document the implants, UDI level, etc., etc. And these 3 aspects, we are working on them. And tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, there will be 2 long meetings with the spinal registries. Feel free to join. But as far as you see on this slide, there are some aspects which we cannot address today, like funding and resources or quality, data quality, and this has to be managed with different measures, with additional measures. Now I will give you an example of Spintango in my second half of my presentation. So Spintango is an international registry which has about 20 years of experience. It's came from paper documentation to the digital documentation, and had some evolution. And the mission is basically to empower the society members in data registration and evaluation for quality assurance and research. So we try to speak common language and further develop the common language, because obviously quality assurance is something all of us are doing in some way, starting with Excel papers, but also in the hospital management systems and etc. So let's try to do it in the same way, and this was basically the strategy for Spintango. Now the key feature is multilingual, has, for example, electronic prompts which are sent to the mobile phone numbers or email addresses, and there are reminders as well. Online stats, implant catalog fed by medtech reporting and research. For example, cumulative revision rates, which you see on the first graph on your left. And 2 aspects I would like to focus a bit more in detail: the implant catalog and the reporting. So the implant catalog is a repository of the implant specification, which was developed in close collaboration with medtech. The data in the catalog are fed by medtech, because this is the only way to have an accurate list of the products. It's a UDI level possibility to record, and right now there are about 200,000 specifications available from 75 manufacturers. And this data, or this list, basically, this catalog is used to add the products to the individual clinical cases. The architecture is publicly available, it's open, so everyone who would like to use the same architecture may just copy and implement it. And we, of course, try to further develop this catalog with additional categorization, classifications, and etc. Everything what will be coming on the right will be always addable to the catalog, because you have your identifiable products there. And the second thing is reporting. So we have reporting services also for medtech in Spintango, and this is available to all medical device suppliers who are active subscribers. And the service includes standard reports, but also access to bespoke reporting. And just to give you an insight, the reports include, for example, activity overview, origin of the data, level of procedure, but also information on the main pathology, preoperative profile with demographics of the patients, previous surgeries, BMI, etc. But also perioperative profiles, which technology was used, was a blood loss was observed, and etc. But also the surgical measures and complications, surgical in general, and patient-reported outcomes. So, for example, this report has COMI, YERCL 5T, and OSVIS-3. Now, and reoperations rate, almost forgot. Now, basically, I would like just to give you a different perspective. So I think the registries today will never manage to let the medtech be compliant with a regulation on their own. I think registries need medtech support. The one point which I would like to highlight here is that we need basically medtech also to propagate registries to your clients and customers in a version as is or enhanced with the nested studies, with an additional outcome parameters, with the radiological data, etc. The other point is that we need to have as full as possible catalog with device specifications. Because without the specifications in the catalog, we just cannot register the implants. And if we cannot register the implants, we cannot support medtech with being compliant with medical device regulation. And the last point is that question of the funding. As I was mentioning already, and as all of you know that, so the data documentation is associated with additional efforts, and we need to find a way how to find it. And we were thinking of a concrete concept and cost estimation, how to maybe fund the regional stuff, like the local champions within the registry or a small region or even in the country, basically to make sure that the quality of the data is high and the efforts to document the data is low. And this is something which we think could have a future. Finally, take-home messages. I think registries is an appropriate study design for monitoring the performance of implantable devices and have a unique value proposition to support medtech. We also think that an appropriate and financially sustainable registry setup and a good quality data are important prerequisites for the MDR compliance. And I think we need to join forces here. And this meeting is already a step forward to join forces. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Question
Emin.
for Emin. Have the registries start to play a role for legacy devices from an MDR perspective? How far back can you go to the point that both other panelists raised with legacy devices?
Yes, I think I can try to answer this question. In some registries, the implant data were collected in the past. For example, in the spine triangle 2, but it wasn't collected based on an accurate list of the implants or catalog fit by the industry. It was rather collected as a free text data entries. So you may imagine that the quality of this data is very limited. But to some extent, we can look back and identify the products. I would say approximately 50% of implantable devices are identifiable in the collected data. So this could be a starting point.
Yeah.
But since 2019, we have the catalog in place and try to make sure that all implants are collected in an accurate way.